Hello and welcome to Beyond Business, where we look at the latest trends in the global economy. If a company is European, should it buy European? And can governments encourage this without resorting to protectionism? Does it make a difference if foreign competitors don't keep to the same standards as domestic companies? These are some of the questions we'll be looking at today, with a particular focus on the airline industry. That's after French MPs have criticised Air France for buying many of its planes from Boeing, a US company. But moves to encourage the carrier to buy European could fall foul of global trade rules. In a moment, we'll be discussing these issues, but first, let's take a look at this report from Josh Vardy, Kim Vaudin and Claire Debussier.
In Seattle on April the 3rd, 2012, Air France took delivery of its 60th Boeing 777-300, and France 24 was invited to cover the event. Alain Malka, Vice President for the Caribbean and Indian Ocean, was overjoyed.
It's not every day we go out and get a plane. We were dreaming of seats like these with the teams. They're beautiful. You know, picking up a 777 here in Seattle means a great deal to us. It's been 2 years since we've wanted to upgrade the Caribbean and Indian Ocean carriers.
There's no first class, but the new plane does have a more comfortable business class, as well as the Élysée cabin, positioned between business and economy, boasting larger seats. Just one way for Air France to respond to the competition that's eaten away its market share.
It became clear about 3 or 4 years ago that we had lost some of our market share. About 2 years ago, we gave up trying to get it back on our routes.
For its other routes, Air France KLM has bought 25 brand new Boeing jet models, the Dreamliner 787. And it's here, in the largest building in the world, on the assembly lines of the Everett factory near Seattle, that these aircraft will be built. Good news for the US company, but not so great for several French MPs, furious that Air France didn't decide to keep operations in Europe. However, the two companies have worked with each other before.
There's actually a historical relationship between Boeing and Air France. Air France has used most versions of Boeing aircraft, from the Douglas generation, right up through the 707s, 727s, 737s, and of course, the 747s.
An old alliance, here there's no feeling of economic nationalism, nor discomfort to work with a US firm.
On my part, I carry out the contract that was chosen by the management of the company. Anyway, you find a lot of French suppliers involved in the manufacture of a Boeing 777.
And for the 787, there's even talk of the Boeing French team. Here at the Dreamliner Gallery, the full extent of French company participation in the latest Boeing is revealed.
Lattiquare, for example, makes the passenger doors. We have Messier, Bugatti, Dowdy, part of the Safran group. We have the Zodiac group. So we have lots of components from our partners in France. In France, I think it's about 12,000 employees total. That represents opportunities in France based on about a $4 billion annual spend.
$4 billion is a figure hard to resist. But of course, Boeing's representative says Air France chose Boeing aircraft because they're the best.
I'm not much for politics, but I can tell you the reason I believe the reason Air France wanted our airplane is because it's a superior airplane. They wanted it for its performance, they wanted it for the passenger comfort, and they wanted it because of the fact that it was lighter weight and more fuel efficient than any airplane out there.
Air France puts just as many of its customers on Airbus aircraft as Boeing's, a way for the company to avoid too much controversy.
Well, I'm joined now to talk about some of the issues raised in that report by Yvonne Jacob, French Ambassador for Industry. Hello.
Hello.
Now, you've written a report called Ending Unfair Globalisation for the French Finance Ministry. And in it, you say that more protection is needed for French industry. And you seem to agree with some of those MPs, perhaps, who say that Air France should buy Airbus. Why do you think that more protection is needed for French industry?
I have never said that Air France should buy more Airbus and Boeing planes. I think between Boeing and Airbus, there is a long-standing competition, which is a fair competition, even if it's a strong competition. And they are sharing the market worldwide, and everything is right on that side. What is completely new is that for the last 10 or 15 years, on the global market, we have new countries entering that market, very well known, such as China, India, or Brazil, or a lot of other countries. And these countries do not follow the rules of we used to have previously when they were not into the market.
So can you give us a few examples of the sort of things that
for example, if you take the China case, they forbid to have products coming from outside China if they do not comply with a compulsory certificate for being allowed to be sold on the Chinese market. And the market authorities in China can say, no, we don't want that product, without any explanation. That's a pure protectionist attitude. And another example is about standards. For example, the International Organization for Labor says nobody can't use the labor of prisoners or children. And the Chinese and some other countries have not signed that agreement, and they continue to have a very low-cost labor force, and so on and so on.
And you were saying, I mean, it's not just about extreme cases such as the use of child labour, but you also have criticism for other nations such as Japan who don't use extreme purposes like that.
For example, Japan, for let's say the last 40 years, doesn't fulfill the public procurement agreement, so that today the share of Europe into the public procurement in Japan is not more than half a point. So it's nothing, in fact.
So what would you say, in your report, can you just take us through what you suggested for the solutions to this?
We have to rebuild a lot of conditions for having a fair competition, which is no more the case today. It's not the situation we have. So we must enter in new negotiations, probably not through the WTO, because WTO is unable to drive today negotiations with 155 countries, members, but through bilateral negotiation between Europe and these countries, or Europe plus USA and these countries.
And now that's the crucial part of your report, isn't it? Because you're saying that these bilateral agreements are not the same as protectionism.
No.
Why? How? What is the difference there exactly? Because it's quite a subtle one.
No, I think that when China, for example, and European Union accept to negotiate, I don't see any protectionism against any other country. Everybody can do that. So we just have to do it, and to build the situation for being able to do it. And one of the conditions is for European Union to have a better control for his borders, in order to not allow products coming from outside entering the European market without fulfilling our own standards.
Absolutely. Now, of course, what you've been saying is that one of the issues is that some of the imports don't fulfill those standards. Is it also a question of perhaps maybe some of the EU standards are too high? Maybe there's too much regulation in the EU. Do you think that's part of the solution, to maybe get rid of some regulation in the EU?
It is true that we have very high standards as far as health or environment are concerned. We can't continue probably to have such standards we must, in Europe, probably change some things and or give to ourselves the possibilities to control our own market, which is not the case today. But we can't, as we justify these standards for the protection of our citizens, we must accept that we can't have products coming from external sources not fulfilling these standards. It's a difficult balance to find.
And in the report there, of course, we saw an example of Boeing in the US. Would you say the US is generally playing on a level playing field with Europe?
Generally speaking, yes, because we have a long spending relation, and I think that most of the main problems have been solved during the last years, or let's say for 20 or 30 years. But I think that US is really submitted to the same problems than those we have today with the new countries. And personally, I think that we should have a common attitude between Europe and US for negotiating or opening new negotiations.
But of course, traditionally, that would have been done through the WTO, the World Trade Organization. You say that's not really possible now?
I think it's always possible, but I think at date, nothing works into the WTO, and the Americans start to do the same than we want to do in Europe.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Yvon Jacob, for speaking to us. It's been a pleasure to have you, and thank you for watching. We'll have more news coming your way in just a moment. Do stay tuned to France 24. Goodbye.